Lizzie Borden took an axe. She gave her mother 19 whacks. When she seen what she had done, she gave her father 10 plus 1. This is Lizzie Andrew Borden, born July 19th of 1860. She was born to her parents, Andrew Jackson Borden, who was born in 1822, and her mother, Sarah Anthony Morse Borden, born in 1823. They had 3 daughters, the oldest of which is Emma Lenora Borden, born in 1851. What a lot of people don't know is that they had their second daughter named Alice Esther Borden, who was born May 3rd of 1856 and passed away March 10th, 1858, right before her second birthday, from hydrocephalus or brain fluids. And here's the golden woman of the hour. You all know her, Lizzie Andrew Borden. 3 years after his wife Sarah Borden's death, Andrew Borden would go on to marry Abby Durfee Gray. She was born in 1828. He was 42 at this time, and she was only 37. But more importantly, Emma Borden was only 14, but Lizzie herself was almost 5 years old. They married on June 6th of 1865. Andrew Borden had worked his butt off in his youth and became a very successful business owner. He was also the president of a bank, as well as multiple property owner, which he would rent those properties for a monthly income. Andrew Borden also came from a very affluent and wealthy Borden family. Once he became more successful, he bought this house at 92nd Street in Fall River, Massachusetts, where many of his cousins and uncles who were a lot more wealthier and better off than him also had homes in an affluent hill part of Fall River. This is John Vinicum Morse. He is the biological brother of Sarah, Emma and Lizzie's biological mother. It's also said that he had business dealings in some kind of way with Andrew Borden. Another really important character here is Bridget Sullivan, who went by the name Maggie, which was very common for a live-in maid, which is what she was for the Borden family for nearly 3 years. She had the 3rd-story, very small attic room to herself. This is what the Borden house looked like then, and this is what it looks like today, because it has been converted into a bed and breakfast, a very famous bed and breakfast. August 4th of 1892, Andrew and Sarah Borden are found murdered in their Fall River, Massachusetts home. It was a very hot summer day on August 4th, 1892, at 92 2nd Street in Fall River, Massachusetts. Maggie the maid rested in her room after washing all of the house windows. She heard the City Hall bell ring at 11 a.m., and then she heard a startling cry from none other than Lizzie, who was 33 at this time. She screams, "Maggie, come down quick! Father's dead! Somebody's coming and killed him!" Andrew Borden had not been home very long that morning because he was out running errands when he decided he was going to come back home and take a nap on his couch, like most men his elderly age would probably do, when Lizzie found him having been whacked anywhere from 10 to 11 times with what they thought was a hatchet, but it could have been an axe or a butcher's cleaver also. Adelaide Churchill, a neighbor and friend, came over to comfort Lizzie and Maggie when she inquired, searched for, and found the grisly discovery of Sarah Borden upstairs, deceased, having been whacked in the head also, in the guest bedroom between the dresser and the bed. That is where she had been changing the pillow shams and making the guest bed, because a certain special guest had been sleeping in it. 30 minutes later, police investigators and a doctor had come to the house, who found Andrew still warm. When they found Sarah, she was cold to the touch. She was suspected to be murdered on the same day and in the same way, but over 90 minutes before her husband. The mind-boggling thing, there was no blood anywhere but the bodies, no signs of a break-in or scuffle. Police concluded this was an inside job. Emma Borden, the eldest sister, was 15 miles away in Fairhaven visiting the Delano/Brownell house, which is said to be cousins. At 9:30 a.m., Uncle John Vinicum Morse was visiting other relatives in town. Andrew had been running errands. Maggie had washed the windows and went up to rest. Emma was visiting somebody 15 miles away. Only Lizzie was confirmed inside the house when Sarah, the stepmother, was likely murdered. At 10:30 that morning, Andrew Borden came back home from running errands on foot in town. He realized he had the wrong key to unlock the front door. But he came around back where Maggie, aka Bridget Sullivan, the live-in maid, had just finished washing the windows and let him in. It was routine for the Borden family, mostly comprised of females, to always keep the doors and the screen doors latched and locked at all times. So Maggie goes upstairs to her third-story live-in private bedroom. And right after 11 o'clock, when that city hall bell rang, that is when she's awoken to Lizzie screaming. So Andrew was not home very long when he came in and decided to lay down and take a nap. Of course, that would be common because Andrew Borden was 70 years old and his wife, Sarah Borden, was 64. Luckily, we had a new tool at that time, and that was photography, which investigators documented. But for the time, it wasn't uncommon for a doctor, physician, or investigators to do an autopsy right there in your kitchen or dining room. And that's exactly what they did with Andrew Borden and Abby Borden, as this is the back of her head when she was unalived. This is a drawing of Andrew Borden at his autopsy inside his own home, and documentation of what their skulls look like, because these were actually used, their real skulls, for the trial of Lizzie Borden. Because you already knew that I was taking it there. On August 11th of 1892, Lizzie Borden is arrested for the murder of her father and her stepmother, who had been her stepmother for nearly 30 years of her life, and the only mother she has known, the mother that raised her. It was very widespread in the news at that time and covered not just in Massachusetts and Fall River, Massachusetts, but nationally. And even 132 years later, there is still new things, evidence, pictures that are coming forward, and she's still being published and written about. Let that sink in. 132 years later. And people flock like flies to shit to the bed and breakfast, which is refurbished to look exactly how it did when the Borden family owned and lived in it. Almost a year later, on June 5th of 1893, Lizzie's trial began in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where she had an all-male jury because women were not allowed to serve on juries at that time. On June 20th of 1893, Lizzie Borden was found not guilty after an extensive trial and acquitted of the murders because this all-male jury deliberated for only 90 minutes. Every single one of these 12 men did not believe a woman of Lizzie's social standing could commit such a heinous and brutally personal crime. So it has been unsolved for 132 years. Lizzie then buys a very nice house up on the hill where all of the affluent Bordens live, and she dubs it Maplecroft. Maggie, the maid, leaves and gets married in somewhere Montana. Lizzie Andrew Borden dies June 1st of 1927, and 9 days later, so does her estranged sister, Emma Borden. And not one of them lived happily ever after.